So welcome everyone. I believe you know who everyone is, but just in case, we have Byron who was at Mega Camp with us. Byron just came back to KW. We won't say where he was before.
He never
he never left. At Park, he was always at KW. And this wasn't Byron's first time at Mega Camp either. I believe you had been a few times.
Several times.
Yeah. So it'll be really interesting to hear Byron's perspective as well, kind of what he noticed was different. This is my second time at Mega Camp, and I found this one amazing. Not that last year wasn't, I just found this one was very well thought out. The panels added way more value in my opinion, and the overall theme was more focused. I found they did a fantastic job with the keynote speakers. And then Steve, this was your second time at Mega Camp. And Steve kind of comes, and the interesting part is what you'll notice is we're all coming with it at slightly different lenses. So Steve owns a mortgage business as well. He's an active real estate agent, and he's heavy into marketing and online and AI. So that's the lens he was coming at it with as well, and the amazing networking opportunity we have at events like this. Byron is kind of looking into more systems and models and getting back to fundamentals and the things we know that work in our business. And my lens is more, what can I take away for our agents and things I know that they're going to value and they can plug and play and implement in their business. So you get to hear all of that. And we have Crystal moderating our panel. Now, Crystal was there as well at Mega Camp. This was her first Mega Camp. So I think you guys all know Crystal. She's our MCA. She's also a licensed real estate agent.
You're like, you're a nobody, whatever. Go sit in the corner.
So Crystal came from it as a real estate agent, but also as someone who handles our operations at the Market Center and helps our agents handle their systems and operations as well. Okay, so we get started?
Are we sitting or are we just?
We can sit. Yeah.
No.
Oh, you want, okay.
Yeah, you can be.
Okay, so for the first question, I'd like each of you to tell me what are your 1 to 3 takeaways, key takeaways that you took away from Mega Camp?
Are we starting on that end or that
You
end?
go ahead.
You're on the spot, Byron.
I'm on the spot. Good. So some of the key takeaways that I wrote down. Number one, that really, I mean, we hear this all the time, but it resonated with me again, is win the morning. Always do my most important work in the first 5 hours of waking up, which Gary Keller said that. And I kind of never heard that second part. He was talking about musicians being on different schedules than most people, but we do our most important work in the morning. So, I think we've all heard that, but just taking that and really focusing on it and being intentional about it is one. The other one should I go with the other one?
Go for it.
Okay.
You're on a roll.
The other one that I really like was get clear on who it is I choose to work with. And that was another one that just kind of, bang right in my head. I'm like, wow, we seem to be working with everyone and anyone that gives us an opportunity. But the way they were talking on Mega Camp, that's not the way to do the best business. Focus, make yourself important, make yourself valuable. So choose the people you want to work with. And I'm thinking about it and I'm like, wow, if I can come back and have that kind of mindset and look at my business that way, how much better would things be?
I think you said the right word there, mindset, because you have to have the right mindset to do that.
Well, mindset, we know that 90% of success is mindset. And that's one of the reasons why I went to Mega Camp.
Yes.
Because I had just come back and what an opportunity for me to get my mindset back to where it needs to be for me to succeed and propel forward.
And it's so true. I know we focus on mindset a lot as a company, and it's for that reason, that stat, right? 90% of your success will be your mindset. And just write that down and remind yourself. The work is simple. The systems and models are simple to learn, but it's the mindset that will oftentimes hold
It's
you
all
back.
mindset.
Yeah.
But it's never about the work. It's
No.
always about your approach to
Right.
the approach to the work kind of mindset. Picking up a phone, anybody can pick up a phone. But if they don't have the right mindset, why they're picking up the phone and how that drives their business, they're just not going to do it.
Mhm.
And that's why I think my podcast is called the Money Mindset Metric Podcast.
Oh.
And that's by design, because I think mindset is one of the most important
Yes.
things for people to have
Yeah.
to be successful.
There's a great book called The Psychology of Money, because of mindset, right? If you feel like you're not the best with your finances, or you feel like you don't have things under control, that book, a big part of it, a big element is the mindset and psychology behind how you think of money and the worth of money and keeping your financial house in order and wealth building and limiting beliefs maybe that have been passed on
Yep.
from your parents or your grandparents. It's all mindset. So that's a really good point.
Can I add on to the morning thing? Because I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Because for me, when I first started in real estate in 2014, I was always a night owl. And I'd stay up till like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'd party my brains out. And, I operated that kind of a lifestyle. As I started to, and I would make maybe 150, 200,000 a year. And I kind of just coast along and it was fine. But as I started getting more specific with how I use my time, because, poor people spend time for money, wealthy people spend money for time.
Mm.
And I started getting that into my mindset. Then I started saying, well, how can I be more effective with my time? And that goes right back to what Byron was talking about, is really focusing on the mornings. So I was like, win the morning, win the day. And so I went from a person who would start my day at about 9 or 10 o'clock to a person like my first meeting with my team is at 6 a.m. And if I'm not meeting, and that's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I meet with my team at 6, I meet with my next team at 7, 8, 8:30, and 9:15. Those are all my team meetings. And with different teams of different organizations.
And different time zones, right?
Yeah, there's different
Yeah,
time zones that I cover as well.
Yeah.
But
6.
Thanks.
So
six,
is it 6 a.m. their time too?
yeah.
Wow.
And so, because they're committed, it's like my first way to test if you're committed, show up at 6.
Really meeting.
If they don't show up at 6, they're not committed.
Mhm.
Like, that's the first test on anything. It's just see if somebody's committed, make it uncomfortable for them. I always think people's true personality really shows up when they're uncomfortable. It's not when things are easy.
Mhm.
It's when they're uncomfortable. So make it uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I'll do Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6 a.m. And then Tuesdays and Thursday, I do 5:30 a.m. for the gym. And
Oh,
so
for the gym.
for the gym on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Not meeting with you 5:30.
No, well, they are. The gym.
I'm still self-selecting out of that one. Any
Can I
other?
finish that?
Yeah.
By the way, that also tripled my income.
Oh, that's an
And-
important
and-
point.
And so by the mindset shift,
Mhm.
I was able to triple my income, and like now it'll be 10xing my.
Why? So why do you think that is?
Because again, I think it goes back to what Byron was saying, is that when you're in the morning and you're focused on the most important things right at the very beginning of the day, it sets the tone of your day. When you roll out of bed at like 10 o'clock and you're kind of whatever, moseying into your day, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. So do it with purpose and you'll find purpose.
There's a great book called The Miracle Morning. It's a short read. You can get it on Audible. You can get it at Indigo. You can order it online. I would highly, highly recommend reading that book. It's good. I'm getting my husband to read that one too.
For realtors.
Yes, well, and you can apply, oh no, that's a Phil Jones book, Exactly What to Say for Realtors. But there's another one called The Miracle Morning. And what it will help you do is come up with a schedule for your morning. And it doesn't have to be business focused. Actually, one of the things I like to do is journal. I'll walk the dog first and feed her and do all that because I don't like doing it. So I get it out of the way.
First thing in the day.
Yeah. What is that saying? Eat the frog first, right? Like all the things you don't want to do, just get it done and get it out of the way so you can look forward to the rest of the day. But my journaling times, I'll make my coffee and I will journal, and it just helps me become very intentional and focused with my day. So the Miracle Morning kind of goes through best practices based on studies and research to set you up for success. And again, that all relates back to that.
And that's why we do lead gen in the morning, because it's normally
You're
what we
eating the
don't
frog.
like to do.
That. But you get it done because at the end of the day, that's what makes us money, right? It's our 20% that will yield 80% of our results.
And going back to what you said about the morning today, someone once said to me one time, I'm not a morning person. And then everyone's a morning person if you want to be. It's your choice, right?
Absolutely.
Just because you say, I'm not a morning person, I'll never get up at 6 a.m. everyone's a morning person if they choose to be a morning person.
If it's important enough to
Yeah.
you, you will go to bed earlier so that you can get up for 6 a.m.
Yeah, a good quote on that is what you think is what you say, what you say is what you do becomes your legacy.
Yeah.
And I think that right there, I mean, I've had people tell me that they can't sell. Like, you just sold me. You just sold me on the idea you can't sell. It's just, you got to choose your product.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So choose a better product. And if you say I'm not a morning person, you're just committing to not being a morning person. Beat it.
Yeah, just change your words around. That's the kind of
Change your mindset.
change your mindset. So I'm not a morning person. You change it to I'd love to be a morning person. Let me figure out how I could do that. Right.
And the work is not simple. The work is simple, but it's not easy, which means the mindset's not easy to do,
Right.
but the work is actually simple.
Yeah, the actual steps are simple.
Do you have a third, Byron?
I did right, become a specialist, not a generalist.
What did you take away from that?
To me, that means, come back and be really focused and purposeful on who it is. And it ties to the second one that I told you.
Yes,
Yeah.
about being very clear on who you
About
want
who
to work
I
with.
choose to work with.
Yes.
And I think we've heard that before.
Mhm.
I guess when we don't have enough business, we take whatever we can, which is one way of doing it. But how about being busy enough so we can choose who we work with?
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about this, and I'm kind of pretty old school. So I did my numbers the past couple years. I think it was 84% of people
Mhm.
are 60 and over.
Oh,
So I don't really work with newlyweds.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting. I'm like, wow.
okay.
So that's why this resonates with me a lot, because be purposeful. So sounds like I get along with them, they get along with me. I'm doing something and I
Yeah.
gotta figure that out and really focus and hone on that
Yeah.
and become a specialist on that.
Curious question on
demographic.
that. If you would, because you've been in real estate for how long now?
14 years.
So let's look back to year 1, year 2, year 3.
Mhm.
If you could look at who you were working with back then, was it 60 plus people back then as well?
No, it wasn't.
Or has it changed?
It's changed.
So that's an interesting thing.
It's changed, yeah. So as I change, I think I attract people. I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't feel like I'm 60. But that's what I'm attracting
You're
and
attracting
older.
them and you enjoy
Plus,
working with them, I'm assuming?
I do.
Okay,
And I have the designation senior specialist or specialist.
yes.
So I put that out there and I guess I'm attracting that
Right.
and I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
totally okay with that.
have more money.
And
It's
the
for
other
sales,
thing,
yeah.
which we'll get into in one of the plays, is you can be more intentional about your marketing,
Mhm.
your content, the material and how you present to them.
Yes.
And this is one of the things, am I okay to kind of jump into my,
Yeah, so thank you for that, Byron.
and I'll just kind of finish that thought is one of the takeaways at CEO Summit, Byron, you were at CEO Summit, I don't think.
I was at jiu-jitsu.
You were at Jiu-Jitsu, fair enough. There was a speaker who spoke about the different generations, right? And getting really clear on how they are different and how we need to adjust the way we interact with them and speak with them based on how they grew up, how were they parented. And so to Byron's point, if he knows kind of 84 of his business is coming from 60 plus, that's a good chunk. Byron needs to get really clear on when he's at a listing presentation, probably tech is not their go-to
Mhm.
on your laptop, right?
Right.
Or on your phone or emailing things where they have to click and it's an app. Byron will probably still come prepared with a presentation on his laptop, but he'll also have something physical for them to touch and feel and keep because that's what they're used to, right? The way Byron interacts with them is going to be different as well. The way Byron follows up with them is going to be different. A lot of times they don't necessarily want to text or get an email. They want to hear his voice. They want him to pick up the phone and communicate that way. So now that Byron knows who he's dealing with, he can become so much more intentional and impactful with the way he's communicating and in turn increase his lead flow, increase his conversions, appointments held, and close more deals
Exactly.
and get more referrals because I'm wow, Byron was amazing to work with because he knew exactly who he was dealing with. So that was definitely one of my takeaways was the different generations and how we need to really understand how they are different and respect that and incorporate that in our process when dealing with them. And if you're curious on that, I don't believe the slideshow is out yet. I did take some pictures of the slides on my phone. I will upload that into the Mega Camp Drive so you guys can take a look.
But to give you a little bit of an idea, I took some notes during CEO Summit. So just as a synopsis, Gen Z wants stability.
Mhm.
Millennials are going through delayed adulthood, so you're going to deal with them a little bit differently. Gen X is naturally skeptical, and your baby boomers define work ethic. So you're going to talk to them differently.
Okay, so Jen.
The Gen Z one's a surprising one to me. I mean, it makes
Yeah.
sense, but it's still, it takes a moment to kind of connect that. I didn't hear that one,
Yeah.
so that's really interesting.
Look, just so I'm clear, Gen Z is like the most recent one, right?
Like today's
Yeah,
young
I think there's
people.
Alpha, Gen Alpha
Yeah.
too, which is they're gonna be really scary. Heads
They're
up,
silent.
they're gonna be super scary. But Gen Z, one of the things he added was they're probably one of the most promising generations because we're calling them the rebound generation.
Yeah, from the
where-
baby boomers.
From Gen X, where they have the baby boomer work ethic because their parents were baby boomers. So Gen X are the ones where we walked to school and back. We were home alone. We made our after school snacks. We rode public transit. We weren't coddled, right? So and because, I mean, technically I'm a millennial. I don't consider myself a millennial. I very much consider myself a Gen X. And so my kids have been raised the way I was raised, right? So it's understanding, if you want to understand who you're dealing with, how were they brought up? Who were their parents, right? So Gen Z, I think they're going to be great. They're going to be like Gen X, and Gen X is a fantastic generation. And baby boomers. Baby boomers and Gen X. And they kind of went downhill a little bit, and now we're back up, and then Alpha is going to be interesting.
Well, millennials are also something funny they said was millennials are tech dependent, not tech savvy,
Right.
which I thought so many millennials say I'm so tech savvy. I know how to work things, but we're tech dependent. We depend on tech. So having that face-to-face conversation, we'd rather text or we'd rather, do it through something else other than a face-to-face conversation, which was really nice.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because they don't know any different. Right? So if you kind of think of how millennials were raised and the access to technology they've had, they don't know anything different than a cell phone. Like when I tell my kids about the fact that I had a landline with like the spiral cord and I had my own, they're like, what? They can't comprehend it because they never lived in a time where they had that technology or a lack of access to their phone. So that's all they know. So if you know you're going into, let's say, a listing appointment with a millennial, probably you want to have, because they also don't like making a lot of eye contact. Like they're just, again, it's not a blanket statement, but you'll notice a lot of them kind of avoid eye contact. So one of the things I find works, and actually they brought this up at CEO Summit, is you have your laptop and you have your presentation there and you put it in between the two of you and you refer them to the screen. So now they don't have to make eye contact with you because we know that could be a little uncomfortable for them. We want them to be comfortable, and we have technology here. So we're using technology to guide the conversation.
But
Pretty cool stuff.
there's that whole belief that when you look at X, Y, and Z, and then Alpha, is that Y is the first attempt at a cyborg, and Alpha will be the full cyborg. Because when I talk about cyborg, it's the integration of tech into, like we right now are cyborgs, we're just inefficient cyborgs. Because we have a very bad connection to the ultimate data. We have to look it up, we have to think about it and connect it, where the next generations, like they're so dialed into it. When you think about AI, that I can just ask my phone, it can give me any bit of information. That is an ineffective cyborg. If I have to use these fingers and these eyes, that's ineffective.
I can already see it with my kids too, right? So my daughter is Gen Z, my son is Alpha, and my daughter very much is comfortable with selfies. My son has no idea how to take a selfie. It was hilarious. It was hilarious. But I'm like, interesting. And I thought back to the CEO summit. I'm like, you can see it in the way they're interacting with the tech. Selfies is not a thing for Alpha. And I asked my daughter, I'm like, what do they do? Like, how does he not know how to take a selfie? She's like, Mom, like they know video games and AI and YouTube shorts and like VR. And that's how that's
Yes,
what they're
right.
comfortable
Well, they're gonna
with.
pay scads of cash for a skin on an artificial version of themselves
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
some
Oh,
software,
yeah.
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's
Fortnite.
the next generation.
Fortnite was like, you buy your skin and it's all.
Doesn't add any utility, like the X's are like, well, what does it give me? And it's like, nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
You look exactly, you look different. I'm like, why am I paying money to look different? Well,
Yeah.
you buy shirts that make you look different, you know?
So again, just something to keep in mind. So like Byron said, get clear on who you're working with, get clear on how they like being interacted with and the tech that they grew up with and are used to and comfortable with, and incorporate that in your sales journey with them. Yeah, hone in on that. I'll kind of cut my key takeaway short so we have time for Steve as well and the other things. The other one I wanted to share is what I noticed, the overall theme, I would say, of Mega Camp was very much getting back into relationships with people, getting back to in-person, having conversations with them. Even when Rory Vaden spoke about social media and online and marketing, there very much was an in-person element to what he was coaching us on and teaching.
Yeah.
So I hate to say it, but hiding behind texts and online ads, yes, go ahead if that's part of your lead gen strategy. But at some point, you are going to have to pick up the phone and have a conversation with them. And at some point, you do have to meet in person, face to face, and smile and hone in on your skills so that you can build rapport. And the best way to do that is practicing your dialogues. And I know you're going to be talking about Phil M. Jones as well, so we'll have some tips on that as well.
Yeah, and I think we unintentionally did a nice little layup.
Yeah,
So now I'm gonna do the
Not
slam.
plan-
I'm
I
gonna do the
know.
Slam dunk.
really works.
Um,
Really good.
Because I think, you know, when we talk about the different generations, the one thing that I really took up, which I really didn't think about, is how people interface in the sense of trust. One of the big things that I do in focusing on media, I work with a lot of companies starting their podcast, doing all these things, one of the businesses that I do. And people do it for many different reasons. One of the most important reasons that I didn't even think, and I've been doing this for a while, we've managed hundreds of podcasts. And what he said blew my mind, because the whole idea, what he was leaning on is trust. And trust is such an important thing. People use the word social proofing, but I think he bypassed that one and went right to the basis of trust. And this was
Rory Vaden.
yeah, and memory of a gnat. And so what he really focused on in trust is that by being present on social media, and by building a brand on social media, I'm not talking about, like, my mortgage business is called Real Approved. It's not about building the brand of Real Approved, because nobody and there's actually a stat here that's a really good stat. It talks about when you look at the different generations, who would you spend more money with? And when people look at it and they say a professional large company or a professional with an established personal brand. And this is something that I paid attention to a long time ago. There's a guy called Tom Peters. He wrote a book called Brand You, something like that. And really about, if Coke is spending all this time and money on a brand, why aren't you personally? Now, whether you're in a corporation or whether you're an independent entrepreneur or even owning a big business, working on your personal brand. And think about things, well, Tony Robbins, Grant Cardone, Gary Keller, they all have their brands. And so the idea is the brand is really important. And if we look at this, and we look at the, keeping in the theme of boomers, boomers, they're basically 51-49 on corporate versus personal brand. So for somebody like Byron, he needs to leverage the idea of Keller Williams and look at establishing a good solid base that he's part of a large organization, big and successful.
And even looking at his, sorry to cut you off, his social media strategy, rather than being on Instagram, it's going to be Facebook and LinkedIn for you, right? You're not going to get as much value from Instagram. You're going to get more value doubling down on Facebook and LinkedIn.
Yep. And then Gen X's are 50-50. Millennials are 38 to the corporate, 62 to the personal brand. And then Gen Zs are 32-68. So 38-62 and 32-68. So we see as people get younger, they're really leaning on those personal brands as a higher authority than the large corporate brands.
Mhm.
And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Because when you talk about stability for them, that's almost like, it's almost a little bit like they're rebellious in that,
Right.
because they're looking at the counterculture versus the establishment.
Well, they
I
want to
think that's an
know
interesting thought.
who that person is. For them, it's not as important about what company they work for or the job title they hold. For the younger generation, it's who are they as a person? Am I gonna like working with them? Can I trust them?
Yeah.
Do they know what they're doing? Do I like them as a person, as an overall person? Right? So as each of you work on your social media strategy, I think the place you need to start is, who are you targeting? Who do you want to work with? Who do you enjoy working with?
And I think the idea of what you were saying about, what was it like in how they were brought up?
Yes.
Really hones in on who they become. Like it or not, we are a product of where we came from.
Yeah.
And I think that's something you need to take into consideration. And then what was the environment, the construct around how they were brought up will also dictate that too. If they've got the phones of, they're used to like, I gotta have a 1 in my phone.
Yeah.
Those 9s were deadly, right?
They were.
And,
5 minutes to dial.
oh yeah, exactly, exactly. But new people are like, rewind it. They don't even know what that means. They use the word, but they have
Yeah.
no idea where it came from. And so I think the idea of defining your audience, really, working in that, and then building trust. And building trust is so important. That's why I love podcasting. And they talked a lot about podcasting at the event. And it's because it's an easy win on a way to be able to go out and just talk to people and build trust. And if you don't want to do that, just grab the phone and start talking. Like that's the easiest way. And just walk around your neighborhood. And talk about the neighborhood and talk about the features of the neighborhood. Just start building some sort of value that people can look at and can key off on.
And what I'll add is it doesn't have to be perfect either, because that's part of your brand.
Yeah.
I posted a clip yesterday evening at soccer, and honestly, I was so tired. I didn't feel like retaking it, and it wasn't perfect. I dropped the phone twice. I think the phone was moving on me at one point. I'm just gonna post it like that. And I got so many comments because they're like, oh my goodness, this was hilarious. It wasn't intended to be hilarious. It really wasn't. It was just me being lazy and tired. But I'm like, I don't care. But it's important to show people the real you. Don't be afraid, and you'd be surprised how people feel like they're missing that in social media, right? We don't want curated and perfect. We want the authentic you. Did you want to go over the one-page play while we're on you?
Let me get that, because that one, I thought it was just.
Want me to ask?
I didn't
I can zoom on my.
I didn't magnetize the
So
font
I'm
for
gonna-
you.
I'm gonna-
Oh,
Yeah.
goodness.
You have to ask the second question first before we
Yeah.
go ahead with the
Yeah.
one-page plays.
Oh, wasn't it your favorite one-page play?
It was, but I didn't know if you wanted me to ask.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I took over. I'm
That's
sorry. I
okay.
apologize.
That's all right. I just so that people watching,
I think it's just
well,
Kyle, we're gonna go
For the
for the recording.
For the report. The cuts.
so what is your favorite one-page play from Mega Camp?
Well, for me, obviously, it was the one from Rory Vaden, right here. I
You
think
guys have it in your handout?
that to me is, I mean, we focus on this so much when we're showing people marketing strategies. And this right here does one of the best jobs I've ever seen of summing it up. And his.
Just checking that you were
So when
listening.
we look at it,
Oh, it's okay,
you know,
you're good.
defining your uniqueness, I think is really important because you can go into a sea of penguins very quickly. And so to be able to stick out like a pelican in the sea of penguins, it's gonna be really important. You're both trying to catch fish.
I haven't heard that one before.
I just made it up.
Oh, good.
And it's called massive imperfect action beats perfect planning. And that's just massive imperfect action. The thing is, one thing you'll notice in just speaking is if you get used to speaking and you talk a lot, you actually become better at it.
Mhm.
It's just, and it's weird to think, like I've been talking for almost 50 years, but the amount of improvement that I've done in the way that I communicate in the last year, specifically because I've spoken on so many stages, I've spoken at so many podcasts, and I've been to so many events. My speaking has become so much more precise in the way I can be able to
Yeah.
put out data.
Absolutely.
And so, defining your uniqueness, I think, is extremely important. And that comes through obviously saying, who do you want to serve?
Mhm.
Which really goes in tandem with what Byron is talking about. And trust, I think, is people talk about social proofing. Social proofing almost to me has a negative stigma. It's like I've got to kind of like social proof. It's weird, but the word trust, I think, is just a way better word to be using. So I'm totally ripping that from him as an idea. And then the personal brand. I think Keller Williams does it. That I used to be with Remax, and Remax, you became into a sea of penguins because you always had to be behind the balloon.
Mm.
Where Keller Williams, I think, does a sort of wonderful job of being an agent first organization.
Yeah.
And so that idea, it's really set up for people to really establish their personal brand.
Right.
So I give a lot of credit to Keller for that. Content strategy, I think, I might diminish this a little bit in the sense of saying, I like massive imperfect action before perfect planning. So to me, don't have a strategy, just go out and do it. So for me, my YouTube channel, we took it from 0 to 50,000 views a month on my YouTube channel in 90 days. And that was just massive imperfect action. And now I've got enough data that I can go back and start figuring out a content strategy. Because I can look to see because some videos that I didn't think were going to do well, they didn't do well in the first month, and then they would start to get thousands of views after that. But the first month they got like 3, and I'm like, I'm going to dump this thing. But it just took a little bit for it to catch, and then it got me thousands of views. And so I think massive action beats perfect planning. And becoming the authority is, I think, again, it goes around figuring out who you are. And what you want to really know, like as Byron was talking about, saying he really wants to focus on servicing the seniors. So knowing who you are, you become that authority to that audience that you're building trust based on your uniqueness. So we can see how this all sort of stacks onto it. And then focusing on depth. I think depth is extremely important. For me, I was kind of bouncing between platforms. I don't do a lot on Instagram.
Yeah.
I'm really working on my YouTube. And so
Well, because that's where your audience is. That's where you're going to see the higher
it's where,
results too.
yeah, exactly. I get better analytics.
Mhm.
The tools are better for me to be able to be successful, and I
Right.
get better return out of it.
Yeah.
Now, and my podcast is obviously my number one.
Yeah.
Which feeds into all of them. I just haven't found enough Instagram at this point.
Mhm.
Because the algorithm for me personally is broken.
Yeah, and again, it depends how you're using it and who you're targeting,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
So you guys have access to this one. Again, I know some of you have asked about social media and personal branding. It really does start with what your superpower is. So some thought into that. And the best way to kind of think about it is, what do you love doing? What do you enjoy doing? If you weren't paid for it, what would you be happy doing for the rest of your life? And then turn that into your superpower, and then understand, who do you tend to attract? So Byron tends to attract boomers, right? And probably because your superpower, I don't know, is patience and explaining things and educating them, and they feel like they can trust you and that they can relate to you.
Look to what he's saying about trust.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is the person that maybe you want to become means you have to stop being the person you are right now.
Right.
And so if you look on your social media and you're posting like smoochy faces and you want to attract
Maybe smoochy faces.
What's an example?
Show us it. Duck lips.
and so if that's your mode, you might attract a different audience than if you're looking to maybe a more of a like Byron's audience might obviously not.
Like
Maybe
the
they
smoochy
might like it.
Maybe.
not.
Who knows?
But the thing is, that's where massive action solves that.
Yeah.
Like if you don't know, just go out and do something, anything.
Well, I would say if you don't know, just go do a few deals and you'll know really quickly. I'm
But
telling
to
you.
find those deals, you have to get into that.
Well, yeah, but like you will know who you like working with and who you do not like working with. It becomes very clear. So just go do some deals. Okay, so you have that one pager. Byron, what about you? What was your favorite one pager from Mega Camp? Your favorite model?
Mine was the Phil Jones.
Okay.
Yes, of this one.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I was really happy to see him there. About 4 months ago, I listened to the podcast.
You have the book, I see. As
And then
well.
when I listened to the podcast, I had to go get the book.
Yeah.
So that was about 4 months ago. Is a recording from October. Do you guys listen to the Millionaire Agent podcast with Jason Abrams?
He's
Should
literally
be.
the best.
You
I am-
absolutely should be, because what the podcast does is these plays we're sharing with you, they're interviewing these guests, these agents, these influencers, these subject matter experts. So they break down these plays for you in further detail. and they provide resources. So then you have the supporting one-page play to just go do it, right? You should be listening to it. Absolutely.
So this is the, if you want to write it down, the October 2023. He was interviewed by Jason Abrams, and I listened to it about 4 months ago,
Yeah.
before I even came back here. And when I heard it, I was like amazed the way this guy talks and what he was teaching. I think I heard it 5 or 6 times. I kept playing and playing
Yeah.
in my car over and over
Good for you.
because the things that he teaches is just the way he talks is amazing.
And he has a British accent, so that helps too.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Helps kind of
So he talks about
digest.
So pick up a British accent.
yeah. So listen to him. Listen to that October interview with Jason Abrams, and it's incredible.
It's
Some
really
of the things I took away, mastering the moments. So he talks about there's going to be things that come up in situations. So why don't we prepare for those things? So when they do come up, we're ready and we look professional and we're prepared. So he talks about putting the elephant in the room. He says, things are gonna come up. Don't cross
Wait
your
for
fingers
them.
and pretend and think, I hope this doesn't come up, I hope this doesn't come up, because it will. And if you put the elephant in the room, he says, dress the elephant, put lipstick on the elephant, like, be
Make it look
prepared.
beautiful.
So when they do talk about it, you're well prepared and you can talk to them about it.
So for example, if we know we're doing a listing presentation, what is a question, a burning question in their minds? They're just waiting to ask you as soon as you're done your presentation.
What's your commission?
Commission, yeah.
So why wait for them to ask the question? Address the question in your presentation. Before you even start your presentation, just say, listen, I know that you're also curious about how commissions work. Don't worry, we're going to cover that as well. So now they can focus on your presentation. And listening to this book and studying the book and listening it over and over again is a form of dialogue practice. He teaches you great dialogues and objection handlers. So see it as dialogue and objection handling practice.
Yes. And I actually used it a few times since 4 months ago. And it's amazing how exactly what he says
Happens?
happens. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
One of the things to talk about the listing presentation you're talking about, he talks about in that podcast about turning your listing presentation on his head. So doing it completely different. And he explains to Jason how he does it is he, instead of opening up our laptop and telling everybody, the seller, what we're going to do, how we're so great, everything I do, he says, put that aside and just talk to them about them. You know, so how long were you in this house? What was that like? And what experiences did you have? And just go dig deep in them. And he says, after you're done listening and really understanding their situation, then you can bring up your laptop and say, okay, I'm gonna do this. Because they really don't care if you don't care about them.
It's so true. And has anyone worked in sales before? Show of hands. What is the first step in sales? Before you go into the product or product information, build a rapport.
The report, yes, exactly what he's doing. Yes.
And then people, really important thing in sales, I believe, is people don't buy for your reasons.
No.
They buy for their
Absolutely.
reasons. And so after you build rapport, it's going through a really good fact finding and finding out what is the dominant buying motive. In other words, what's the number one reason why they're going to make a decision today, not tomorrow. We all know with our first time buyers and, you know, people who just kind of sit on the fence, what's the number one thing that's going to make them make a decision today? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one thing that you really hit on, and I'm just going to kind of roll it back to what we were talking about before, is there's two things that you just talked about. Number one is you talked about the value of the content that's in the ecosystem of Keller Williams. But
Yes.
more importantly, you talked about the timing of which the value of the content that hit you, which was 4 months ago. And were you with Keller Williams at that time?
Nope.
That's the power of having a brand and having a social presence, because he was consuming content at that time that was helping Melody be able to bring him back into the system. Right?
Top of mind, right? It's nurture plan, right? So just keeping top of mind and adding value.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, no one can force Byron to come here. It has to be his decision.
They
And
say
it's the same thing with your client.
there's a stat that says that people go from not knowing to buying, and it's like 38 touch points that's required to be able to get that person from
Mhm.
not thinking about it to
Yeah.
actually finishing. So if you think about it, how many times did you watch that video?
At least 5, 6 times.
Yeah.
I listened to it in my car.
And then there's probably some other things that you started hitting on that started making you really start to think about Keller Williams.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, at some point, either you picked up the phone or she picked up the phone, and then you made that deal happen.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so the idea is that constant presence becomes extremely important.
Mind share.
Yeah, you get mind share.
It does. And so I really strongly recommend you guys getting involved for listening to him. He's amazing the way he talks
Yeah.
in his presentations, whether it's for buyers or sellers. One of the things he's big on, he says, because of the fact you said so and so and so, for that reason, I recommend so and so and so. And it's just incredible the way he wraps it up.
And you're right, you do have to listen to it a few times.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
A
Because
bunch
I
of
was
times.
like, wow, when I
Yeah.
heard it all, I'm like, I gotta hear it again and again.
Did you take notes?
After
Yeah.
about the third time, I actually wrote the scripts down.
So the question is,
And after that, I'm like, I'm just gonna buy that book. And it's all here anyway.
So the scripts are in there.
It's all
The
here,
dialogues
all
are
the
in
scripts
there.
are here,
Okay.
yeah.
when you're in a listing presentation or a buyer presentation, how many times are you taking notes down?
Oh, you mean in front of your?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, are you taking notes? Are you grabbing a pen and saying, that's really important?
Mhm.
I'm gonna write this down, or even on the computer, I'm just
Supposed
gonna,
to.
and write this down. And some of those things are gonna be things around the strategy around what they wanna do.
Mhm.
But some of those other things is that if you realize that you keep on running into a commission objection and you're not handling it right,
Mhm.
then you know that you need to be able to work on that. So if you're strategic about the information that you capture, you can be strategic about the way that you solve it.
Mhm.
So a lot of our people, when they do things on Zoom, we have them record the Zoom session. And the reason why we do that is we can strategically look back at it and we can analyze the transcript because we pull the transcript and we can see exactly where the things went wrong.
Yeah.
So you could do that for yourself. Think about it this way. If you did a presentation on Zoom, and I'm not suggesting, I believe belly to belly, I'm with Gary Keller
Mhm.
on that. But if you did have some meetings on Zoom, record it. And if you can't do that, analog record it. Because the more that you can capture data, the more you can be effective. Baseball players, they only hit 30% of the time, but they track every single stat. What are the stats you need to track to be successful in your sales presentation?
Mhm.
Well, yeah,
That's a really
tracking.
good point.
How about you, Mel? What was your favorite
If I-
one page
Which one
takeaway?
page or did you choose?
I'm gonna share two if that's okay. Do we have time?
We have 10 minutes.
Perfect. Okay, so the first one was the concept of micro events. So you have that one pager with you. Now, Meg was a former corporate lawyer, and Meg is very honest about the fact that she's an introvert. I'm like, I can relate a little because whenever I hear some of these agents talk about events, I'm like, oh my goodness, I would be mentally drained if I threw something that extravagant and grandiose every quarter, let alone like once a year. I found the micro events, especially for our agents who are more introverted in nature, something that's very doable. And again, remember the overall theme being get back into relationships, get face to face, get belly to belly, have them see your face, build those connections. And events are a wonderful way to do that. But what if you don't like doing events? So micro events is one solution. And in here, she lays down her exact process. So it is a 6-week kind of process building up to the micro event. So she starts with the invitation, then she sends out the link, she sends out a reminder, another reminder, and then a thank you email at the end. She also provides some examples of how you can tell your story about the event on social media. So there's some images you can reference. And most importantly, she gives you some examples of micro events. So one of the ones I heard I really liked, I'm not sure if it's on here, but we know the holidays are coming, was a wreath making workshop. Again, you don't have to be the one doing the workshop, running the workshop or the tutorial. You find someone, maybe it's a local shop or a local community artist that can run this workshop for you, create a win-win situation. So, hey, local shop owner, the holidays are around the corner. I would love to get you more clients in front of you. And I'm looking to add more value to my community. Why don't we partner up and do this event? So really all you're doing is running the 6-week play of creating the registration link, the emails, the follow-up, and then have a space so you can by all means use the brokerage as a venue if you'd like, and then host them, right? So maybe organize some food and snacks and then let the guest do the heavy lifting in terms of running the workshop. So she gave a bunch of ideas. Another one I heard was holiday charcuterie board DIY, so how to make that. Holiday drinks could be another one. Kids cooking classes, knife skills class. That one's interesting. Lesson.
Cutco that came in.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this is something
Oh.
different.
Lessons at a driving range. Cool. I don't golf, but I certainly know a lot of people who do golf, and they could probably, I could get a small group together and we could do lessons at a driving range, boxing class, bowling. So there's a bunch of different ideas. So maybe think of a micro event you can throw during the holiday season, even if it's just one little event, and get in front of your database, get in front of some of those leads that you're capturing.
And what's interesting is to put that together with what Byron's talking about. So for example, Byron would be looking at maybe like a scrapbooking event or something, you know.
Boring, you say?
A quilting event.
I think read making would be really popular with
Yeah.
your database, right? Anything to do with holiday hosting
Mhm.
or cooking would be really popular.
Did they talk about the amount of people in that?
So it
Micro
really
events?
just depends on your venue limitations. I think she said on average she'll have around 30 to 35
Okay.
at her event. So you, Byron, because you've been practicing real estate for a long time, you have past clients, maybe you would open it up to some of your VIP past clients.
Yes.
Right?
Top people.
Or maybe your top referral sources, invite them to the micro event.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're newer and you're like, well, I don't even know if I have 30 people to invite, you just invite them all. So it just depends where you are in your real estate business. The other one I want to quickly cover is strategies that sell. And I think it kind of ties in everything we've been talking about. And Dominic is a realtor. He's a team owner based out of the UK. And what I found really interesting was how different real estate is in the UK. So in the UK, there is no buyer representation, and it's not a designated profession, meaning a realtor has the same credentials as an account manager or as a salesperson. There's nothing special you need to do, no additional schooling you need to go. I know, it's crazy. And what was the crazy stat? He shared at least 50% of the deals fall through. It never actually sees the closing table.
Wow.
If not
Because they can
higher.
walk away, like, there's no such thing as firm and binding.
No,
They can walk away like the day before close.
Yeah.
Or the day of close.
and nothing happens. It's just like, oh,
Like, I just don't feel like.
well, okay, good thing I have a full pipeline. So they approach real estate very similar to how you would approach maybe selling a tech product, or you know what I mean? It's just very much like keeping your pipeline full. Dominic saw a need to really add value in that process so that they can kind of stop this vicious cycle that's going on. So what he talks about is how he approaches his listing strategy very differently, where he focuses on 2 moments with the seller, prospective seller, going to market and showing the property, and really understanding, first of all, what their motivation is. So what's the story behind why they want to sell? What's the emotion behind why they want to sell? Which is why I need to read that book and ask great questions, identifying what their needs are. And then once you're clear on that, then customizing that listing strategy to what they need and what they've shared with you and what their story is, and getting that buy-in. And a lot of times what I see realtors do is they have a standard listing presentation, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But how are you going a few levels deeper with that and really customizing that listing strategy to what their needs are? The other thing Dominic and his team are really good at is understanding the type of buyer they need to go after. Because in the UK, remember, there's no buyer agent bringing the buyers. They have to go find the buyer, right? So he uses a tool, it's in here, Experian Mosaic Portrait, to understand exactly the type of buyer that will be purchasing that property. So we know if it's a $2 million listing, it's probably going to be upper middle class. It's going to be someone that's likely upsizing, not downsizing. It could be a family, probably not going to be a retired couple. So getting really, really clear on who you're targeting And then what they do is they cater the marketing and the outreach and everything around that type of buyer. So that we're speaking to that buyer, we're using the right language, we're understanding the generation of that buyer and catering everything to that buyer. So I would highly recommend digging into this, especially if you do have a listing presentation coming up. There's some really good resources, and he was on the MREA podcast. I would listen to that podcast where he goes deeper and in more detail into these strategies.
Just to add to him,
Mhm.
'cause we were talking to him,
Yeah,
and I
we
was
had
ask-
dinner with him.
I was asking him a lot of questions, and something that I found really different than us is he says, I don't call people. I don't need to call people because they provide so much value.
Mhm,
They call me and they find me and they look for me. And I'm
mhm.
like, wow, that's very different. We've all been told, call, look for clients. He says, clients look for me. If I do a good enough job with a certain client, they're gonna tell his whole goal was for that client to tell everyone about him and their team so they can get business like that.
I would just asterisk that, because depending on where you are in your cycle,
Mhm.
you know, people call him because he did a good job. If you're new, you haven't done a job yet. So
Right.
Right,
the idea that or even if you're just trying to cycle up your business. I mean, if you've done an average of 10 to 12 deals, and you're trying to go to, 20 to 30 deals, what you did yesterday is not going to produce the results you're looking for tomorrow. And so I would say, rather than saying, or, I would use the word and, which I think is a more powerful word.
Yeah,
I mean, still call and
yeah.
really hone in on that strategy.
And I think what he was trying to convey, because I was in on that conversation, is he absolutely takes his seller journey very seriously because that's where the bulk of his business comes from. And so start with that first transaction. What is the level, the standard you're setting for yourself and your business so that they have nothing but an exceptional experience with you, so that you don't even have to ask for the referral. They're already handing that information over. That
That
should
was
be
his
your
point.
goal.
Yeah.
That should be your goal.
Well, the transaction, whether it's anybody in this room who does the transaction of selling somebody's house, is exactly the same. The transaction itself, a piece of paper gets written up, the lawyer closes on things, mortgages get done. It's all the same. The only difference is the experience they have in the process. I mean, granted, results can be different, price and stuff like that, and how good you are. But the idea is the experience is something they buy because of you and the experience that you give them. Now, that might be your team and,
Yeah.
and that sort of thing, but the experience is so critically important because I think that's what drives the referrals. And
It does.
You know,
It
for
is what
me,
drives the
I
referral.
did and I'm not saying don't do this,
Yeah.
but I did I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago. I sat in one of these meetings and I went, they said, like, you should do a Thanksgiving welcoming thing. And I'm like, I'm going to do a Thanksgiving. So I sent out this whole thing to my database and a couple people call me back, which is obviously a good thing. So that would say some positive. But they said, like, why are you sending me this? Like, I don't know, because I'm supposed to be doing it. They're like, dude, we're just going to call you when we need you. And because we're just so happy with, and that's
Yeah.
exactly what.
Yes, that's a good idea.
I don't market anything on real estate, nothing. And the phone just rings.
Yeah.
And it's because of exactly what he's saying, which is creating that absolutely amazing experience that they have, that they're not going to even have the idea of looking somewhere else. Now, if you put that together with doing really good follow-up,
Yeah.
with having a good campaign, you can 10x.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So
Any questions?
I need that name of that book.
Yeah,
Exactly
yeah.
what to say
Yeah.
for real estate agents by Phil M. Jones. If you just Google
Exactly
his
what to
name,
say.
yeah. And you can get it on Audible. I would recommend Audible and a physical copy. Because again, just like the MREA, you should be studying that book. It's got amazing dialogues and objection hands. Does anyone want to share their aha or a key takeaway? And I notice you're online. You're welcome to unmute if you had a question or wanted to share anything. Nothing that resonated or something that you're excited to dig deeper into?
Lots.
Yeah,
Lots. Yeah.
if you had to pick one though, like when you go home, where are you gonna start?
I like that quote, become a specialist, not generalist, I like that. And wake up in the morning and do your thing, that's what I like.
When we were there, here Keller was wearing a shirt, it says, do the work,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's some so simple, like, we know we're supposed to do the work, but do we actually do it
Just
on a
do the
consistent
work.
basis?
Mindset, the other
So,
one.
Yeah.
when like he's talking about that, he's like, you gotta do the work.
Yeah.
Which we know what our work is, lead generate.
If you have had 0 real estate conversations today, you have not done your job yet. So go have at least 1 real estate conversation.
And how many should we be having, Melody?
It depends on your net income goal, which we're gonna be talking about on September 5th. It really does depend, right? So Byron, in your case, it's, I don't know, probably at least 25,
Yeah, you shouldn't go a day without at least talking to 10 people
10 people, yeah.
a day. Yes, you can go as much as
Again,
possible, but
That's why you need to know your numbers, right? So
Yes.
September 5th, we're gonna be digging into your numbers and understanding based on the life you wanna live next year, all the trips you wanna take, all the cool things, the designer bags. Have my eye on the designer shoes? I have to budget for that, right? That's not just gonna happen. I'm not gonna go into debt funding that lifestyle. You understand how many transactions you need to do. From there, you know your net income, what you need to take home, you work in your expenses, and then you understand how many conversations you need to have, how many leads you need to generate weekly, and what your conversions need to look like. You need to know your numbers. Without knowing your numbers, you're just flailing, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's a key thing about strategy and tactics. We talk about tactics, that's things like knowing how to handle objections and being in that moment where you're talking with that person. The strategy side of selling is one of the most important overlooked element of selling, which is knowing your numbers and tracking that daily, at worst case weekly, your numbers. If you don't track it daily, like your rounding error is so bad, you need to track your numbers daily.
And so we'll go through all of that and then how you do that. So.
Cool.
Amazing. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Byron.
Thank you, Melody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
This was really fun.
I mean.